Do you have the it factor? What is the it factor? Do I need to have the it factor in order to be regarded as a good healthcare professional? These are some of the questions I recently explored in a podcast episode that I was listening to. And what I did was repurpose this in the space of healthcare communication to see how the principles and concepts of this it factor can be applied in the space of communication to us as healthcare professionals so that we can be not only more competent but also liked, valued, trusted and respected by our patients. To learn more, stay tuned for the rest of the video. A very warm welcome to everyone back on my channel. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Shweta. I am the founder of Healthy Dynamics. We are a coaching practice that helps healthcare providers from non-English speaking countries help improve their language and communication skills in order to build better relationships with their patients, as well as enjoy their vocation and stand out in it as a person of excellence. Now, if there's something that you should know or don't know about me, is that I am an avid podcast listener. The reason for that is because I'm a very strong auditory learner. I learn best by listening to information. I connect very well by a person's voice. That's the first thing that I noticed in a person, what their voice is. So for me, the best way to learn is via podcasts. And I'm subscribed to about 20 of them. Honestly, I don't have time to get through all of them. I'm just going to put here a list of all the podcasts that I listen to. As you can see, it's a very extensive list. And one of the podcasts that I have recently been listening to, and not only listening to, but binging on, is the Mel Robbins podcast.
Has launched and sold multiple businesses and invests in them and sits on boards. And you are constantly leaning into new ideas and curious about things. And what he just told you is that the way that he gets out of the ideation stage and the I should start a business stage, or maybe I'm going to get into this collaborative workspace business until community.
So Mel Robbins' podcast, for the ones who don't know, she is a very well-known, acclaimed and famous speaker, coach, author, podcaster. You know, she's all into the self-help space, and she's into all research-based hacks that you can really use to improve your life. So that's what she's all about. Now, one of the episodes in Mel Robbins' podcast is where I came across this concept of the it factor. Now, you guys must be wondering, what the hell is this it factor? What is it all about? Why am I going on and on about it? So I'm just going to summarize what was covered in the space of it factor in this particular episode. So in this episode, Mel actually interviewed a lady. Her name is Vanessa Van, don't remember her surname. But yeah, she basically talked about how the concept of charisma, which is really the it factor, can make a person influential, impactful, and successful in their field of work. And it got me thinking about how this can be sort of interpreted and applied in the space of communication that I coach my clients on, which is in the healthcare space. Now, let's just take the word charisma in isolation, for example. So, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear of the word charisma? You might be thinking of the person who's very exuberant, flamboyant, very much the life of the party, who's loud, who is very entertaining, who's humorous, and all in all, a person who's very gregarious and extroverted. Now, I can think of a person such as Freddie Mercury. He was a very, very charismatic, back in his day, very charismatic performer. Similarly, Taylor Swift, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of her, she is incredibly charismatic. That is another person who everyone regards as being a very charming person. At the same time, a person who we don't normally view them as charismatic just because they don't show up that way. But regardless, they are. Now, one person that I find very, very charismatic is a retired tennis player, Roger Federer. Now, Roger Federer, even though, yes, he's shown up in a lot of advertisements, he's done a lot of brand sponsorships and deals, and he's endorsed a lot of products, and he may well be an extroverted person. For me, what actually I really like about Roger Federer is the tone of his voice and the fact that he's gracious, he's a gentleman, he's down to earth, all of those things. But charisma is not just about how flamboyant you are. The very definition of charisma is your ability to be warm, competent, and to be connected and be trusted by your audience. So that's essentially what charisma is. And it's very closely linked with how much of an influence or impact you make on your audience. So for example, let's go back to Taylor Swift's example. I remember, because in my city, I didn't go to this concert, but everyone who was in the Taylor Swift's Eras tour, every single person was, again, for days and weeks in a row, they were singing her songs. All the radio stations, everywhere on social media, it was all about Taylor Swift. So because she is very influential, she may not be as talented as some of the other artists that I personally know, but she is very influential. She is incredibly charismatic. And that's what a charismatic person does. They're stuck in your head almost, and you almost cannot get enough of them. It's sort of like you become addicted to them, sort of, yeah. And they are someone who has left a very good and positive impression on your mind. Now, I wanted to just cover some of the myths and facts about charisma and how you can apply to the concept of charisma as a healthcare professional. Now, one of the things that I wanted to make extremely clear before I go into the myths are, when I say charisma, are you automatically thinking about, as a healthcare professional, do I have to get up on stage and sing or perform or talk like Taylor Swift? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm going to cover at all. And that's actually one of the concepts that I'm going to dispel the myth about what charisma is and isn't. So even though that is how we traditionally know charisma as, it can very well be applied to us when we're communicating with our patients. And I'm just going to repurpose that and add a different spin or a different definition to charisma and talk about individually these 5 myths that I am trying to bust in the space of charisma in order for us to be trusted, respected, valued, and regarded by our healthcare professionals and be successful in our jobs. So let's get that. Okay, the number 1 myth, which I sort of segued into just before, you have to be extroverted, flamboyant, and really over the top to be, and overly confident to be charismatic. That is absolutely untrue. Now, I'll speak about myself personally. For me personally, I am drawn to people who are not necessarily just flamboyant, confident, whatever else. I'm actually drawn to people who are thoughtful, who are deep, who are very, what can I say, they show that they care about you, they value you, they have your side, they support you, and they have your best interests at heart. Now, one of the podcasts that I listen to over here, it's called Spinsterhood Reimagined, and the host of that podcast, her name is Lucy Megason. Now, I remember leaving in my Apple Podcast review, I said, one of the things that really draws me to your podcast, Lucy, is your voice. And Lucy is a very, very introverted person. But on her podcast, the way she makes her audience feel, the way she empowers her audience, even though she's an introvert, is all I need to know for her to be charismatic. And that's why it is one of my favorite podcasts. So that's what charisma is. So just because you are introverted, it does not mean that you're not charismatic. So sometimes introverted people, even though they don't say much, what they say has a lot more depth, a lot more substance. Their actions are the same thing. They actually go above and beyond with people who they're working with, people who they're serving, and also they will go out of the way to support you. And they see things, their perspective is very, very unique from the sometimes extroverted crowd. So just because you are an introvert does not mean that you're not charismatic. It's got nothing to do with that, in fact. So charisma is a completely different combination of different things, which is what I'm going to get into in the very next one. Number 2, the myth. I don't need charisma. My accolades, degree, and knowledge will be more than enough and it'll speak for itself. Now, it is true to an extent. You got to know your stuff. You got to know what you're talking about. 100%. I'm not disagreeing with that. However, we now live in a day and age now where everything is automated, everything is taken over by technology. So what people are really missing is that real human element. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for genuine human connections, genuine conversations, people to be raw, relatable, vulnerable, and empathetic. These are all the things that people really, really value. And in particular, if you are a healthcare provider, you are working with some of the most vulnerable members of society. So it's even more important that you sharpen these skills. And I'm going to get into that in one of the forthcoming myths. But this is what I mean, that just because you may have, a PhD, you may look professional, like I've talked about in some of my previous videos. You may have immense amount of knowledge. You may have every degree under the sun. That is not going to mean a person or a patient is going to trust you necessarily. Because if you're not warm, if you're not friendly, if you're not likable, if you're not personable, if you're not authentic, if you're not vulnerable, all these things just do not matter. And they will not trust your competence if you just let those things do the talk. There has to be a balance about how much knowledge you're sharing, but 80% of the weight really is that how you connect with your patient. And all the elements that I talk about on this channel, which is active listening, showing empathy, body language, all the different factors, that is pretty much your make and break factor. Let's talk about an example, a very recent example. So I just got off the phone with my GP, and it was supposed to be a very short interaction, telehealth chat, where I just needed some scripts for some of the medication that I'm taking. So I was like, yeah, just give me the script for that one for the next 6 months. It could have been a 30-second conversation, but she went to the next level and asked me how I'm feeling, how I'm doing, and what the effect of these medications, if any, am I feeling, how I'm feeling, how I'm doing, and what the effect of these medications. Now, she didn't have to do that, but from that interaction, I could tell that she genuinely cares about me and she wants to support me and she has my best interest in her heart. So just that little bit is all you really need to be charismatic. So charisma is not something that you have to really think very hard about, or you have to go above and beyond and do something extravagant. It's to be charismatic. It's just these simple things that people don't generally think about, but really showing that you are caring and you're compassionate and you're supportive really goes a long way in making you not only more charismatic, but also likable, respected, and trusted. Now, number 3, I'm not born with charisma, and therefore I can't learn it. Now, yes, granted, there are a lot of people who are incredibly charismatic, who are born with charisma, although you would not be able to tell just by looking at them. So, for example, a lot of the people who you know who are very charismatic, let's just throw out someone like Mel Robbins, for example. I find her incredibly charismatic and a brilliant storyteller. But there was a time when Mel Robbins had dyslexia, she had ADHD, she had anxiety. So she was an incredibly awkward person, and social anxiety completely paralyzed her. So she has obviously broken through all those boxes that she was in, and she has now become the person that she is. She's one of pretty much the top 10 influential women in the world now. So charisma is not something you necessarily need to be born with. Every single person can be charismatic in their own way. It's about adding your own secret sauce and your own personal touch and communicating from your genius zone, because at the end of the day, your patients need to feel reassured and they need to feel like you are genuine, you are authentic, you are honest, you are supportive. You're not just in it because they are paying you, and you don't just see them as numbers in a system or cogs in a machine. You see them as individuals with unique needs, unique personalities, unique body types, and unique conditions. And hence, you will treat them individually as per their individual circumstance. So that's number 3. Number 4, being charismatic is the same as being inauthentic. Now, that is a lot of the things I think of people nowadays, they get really twisted that, the people who are very charismatic, and a lot of these stories are really coming out in the media now, for all these people who were, everyone really loved, everyone really admired, everyone really looked up to, and they're now being cancelled because they're a bunch of frauds. So that speaks for itself. So just because you want to be charismatic, it does not mean that you have to fake it. It does not mean that you have to put on an act. In fact, what really matters is that, whatever you're saying, however you're communicating, is coming from, your heart space, really, from deep within you. And also, you should, if you are genuine, if you're good about your intentions are positive, your intentions are genuine, just as like you are, you don't have to try too hard in order to be charismatic. It'll just come to you quite naturally. So, just because you are charismatic, it doesn't mean that you are tricking people or fooling people or you're lying to people. There are a lot of people who do that, but they're not authentic, and therefore, in my opinion, they're not charismatic. They're just con artists. Number 5. I won't be respected if I am not charismatic. Now, I'm just going to draw a little spectrum over here, which sort of shows this balance that all us healthcare providers need to really have when we're communicating with our patients. So charisma really is a fine line between being warm, being competent, as well as being respected. Although what I should say is that the respect is really the byproduct of it. So you can find yourself anywhere in the spectrum. So what you can do is, if you're really warm, people will think that, oh, you're just trying to be very friendly, you're doing this because you want everyone to like you, and that can really risk you in you becoming a bit of a pushover, like a doormat. People can take advantage of you, just not stick to your boundaries or not respect them, and things like that. So that's one thing. But on the other end of the spectrum, if you're just word vomiting all the time about what you know, what the research is, what this is, what that is, everything that is probably going to be over the head of a standard patient. So you might be very knowledgeable, but you're taking no effort in actually connecting with your patient and really getting to know them and communicate with them in a personalized manner. So that's the other extreme. So people are not going to trust you in that situation, and they're not going to respect you. So when you have that little sweet spot, that really fine balance between being warm and being competent, is where people will really respect you, patients will really respect you, trust you, and the impact of charisma is absolutely significant, because charisma is the one major factor that is going to determine your influence, impact, and your income. Because think about it, the more of a positive impression you leave on one patient, that same patient is going to keep coming back to you. And there's a very good chance that they will refer you on to other people as well. And that way, that means there's more income for you. So that is what I needed to cover in this video, where we talk about what charisma is, what charisma isn't, and how we can develop charisma in a much better way. So just to wrap things up, charisma is not just being, flamboyant out there, shouting from the rooftops about who you are and what you do. It's about you really being authentically expressing yourself, being heartfelt, being thoughtful, being genuine, meaning well, having good intentions, and really personalizing your communication and treating your patients with kindness, empathy, and respect. And that automatically will generate the results you're looking for by your ingredients that will make you a charismatic healthcare provider. So hope this video was useful to you. If you like what you see, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and like the video. And that way it can go to distribute to all the people that really need it. So thank you very much for staying tuned in this video, and have a good weekend, or good week wherever you are in the world and whenever you're watching this video. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much.